Hi, everybody. My name's Johnny, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 4th, 1961, which is a long time between drinks. Sometimes I'm so dry I think I'm a fire hazard, for Christ's sake, but I want to welcome you all to this weekend book study or workshop or whatever you want to call it. Basically, what I want you to know before we ever get started on this situation, by no wild stretch of the imagination am I a consultant, a counselor, or authority on a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm an example, good, bad, or indifferent, that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous works. It has been necessary for me to drink anything, swallow anything, smoke anything, have any type of psychic medication in my system. I haven't stuck any needles in my arm. I haven't smoked any non-habit-forming marijuana since sometime before the 4th day of November, 1959. And the only thing that I contribute that to, very simply, is what I've learned from this magnificent manuscript called Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the key of life for people like me. And the reason it's the key of life for people like me is because I'm an alcoholic. I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm not a drug user. I'm an alcoholic. And if you don't know the difference between those two things, maybe by the time we get through with this weekend, you will understand it. Now, you all stood up and you made a statement. You all stood up and said, I'm an alcoholic. Do you have any kind of an idea what you just said by any wild stretch of the imagination? The American Medical Association says that alcohol is the #1 killer in the world today, without a doubt. It is the second leading cause for permanent insanity in the world today. And you just stood up and said, you got it. Now, what this book is, it's written for people who are trying to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It's what alcoholism is. It's not a social illness. Nobody's ever been able to figure out why maybe only 1 out of 10 people who drink alcohol are afflicted with this illness. They've never been able to figure it out. They've spent billions of dollars trying to figure out what makes us different from all the other people in the world who drink alcohol. Why this small percentage of people get this strange reaction to alcohol that 9 out of the other 10 people in the world who drink don't get. They haven't figured it out. And the reason they haven't figured it out is because they're too smart to read this book. They're too smart to read this book and find out that the difference between a heavy drinker and an alcoholic is very simple. Our co-founder, Bill Wilson, wrote about it on page 22 in our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. He talks a great deal about in this book about alcoholics of our type. He goes on to list 3 distinctive types of people who may be alcoholic. He says the type of alcoholic who can drink and given any type of reasonable excuse can quit drinking. Just like that. It's all over. Never drink again, never take these steps, don't need a sponsor, don't need a home group, don't need to go to 3 or 4 meetings a week, don't need to be of service and try to help anybody, don't do nothing, just sunk back. You quit drinking, it's all over. Those kind of people are the ones that the treatment centers hold up as examples. Look how many people we've cured. They also talk about, Bill also talks about this thing, about another type of alcoholic who sometimes has become physically addicted to alcohol. Physically addicted. These are the type of people that need detoxes. That's what the 10-day detoxes are for, to get them off of alcohol. These people can quit drinking given any type of reasonable excuse. Falling in love, falling out of love, getting a job, losing a job, threatening to lose a job, threatening to lose a wife, threatening to lose everything. They can quit and never, ever drink again. But then the book talks about alcoholics of our type. We can quit drinking, giving some type of reasonable excuses, like jails. They call it intervention in the upper echelons of the world, police intervention, physical things, whatever it can be, tragedies can make people stop. But this particular type of person, this particular type of alcoholic will sooner or later always drink again. Sooner or later. Has to drink again. Unless something could happen to him. You hear a great deal of things in Alcoholics Anonymous, or I don't know where they've come from. I don't know where they creep in. Maybe they creep in from some places, and maybe they creep in from other places. But they basically have no ringing truth to the alcoholic whatsoever. You hear things in AA meetings like, don't take a drink no matter what. Sounds good, don't it? Alcoholics will drink no matter what. They will drink. Unless the book says you can install in me a sufficient substitute. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is all about. And so if you're lucky enough to be in a home group where they stress the program of recovery called Alcoholics Anonymous, and they're not all caught up into a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are two entirely different things, you may be lucky enough to get into this magnificent program of recovery and recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And if you're an alcoholic of my type, or the type that the doctor writes about in this book, it's the only chance you have to live or go insane. And it hasn't got anything to do with how smart you are, how educated you are, how much money you have, how much money you don't have, how cash registry honest you are. The book talks about rigorous honesty. They're talking about honesty within yourself. Now, what are one of the requirements, I think are requirements, to recover from this seemingly hopeless state of mind and body? What type of shape, what type of dilemma does a man or a woman must be in to want to do these things? In the last paragraph of this book, the 12 and 12, step 1. Let me read to you what it says. It's my favorite paragraph. You can read that paragraph and throw this book away for all you're going to get out of it. This is what it says. Under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA. And there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Then and only then do we become as open-minded to conviction and as willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything which will lift this murderous obsession from us. Now that is an awful lot to be said about the requirements for recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. To me, my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, those are the requirements for recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, they're not the requirements for recovery if you're a heavy drinker. If that's all your problem is, just quit drinking, for Christ's sake, and go play golf. Or, if you have a problem with drugs, just quit using drugs. And you can go out and ride motorcycles or some damn thing. But if you suffer from this seemingly hopeless state of mind, and one of the base requirements for people who have recovered or recovering in Alcoholics Anonymous are outlined in that fatal paragraph of the step 1 in the book 12 and 12. We stand ready to do anything which will lift this murderous obsession from us. Well, what is it that we must do? What is the anything we must do? Well, basically, we have to quit running our own lives. That's number 1. Secondly, we have to learn to get out of our selfish, self-centered, self-serving attitudes about life. Me, me, me. The third thing is, and the killer of all things for alcoholics of my type, is this. You don't understand, my case is different. That is the death sentence for every alcoholic that I have ever known in the 44 years I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't understand. My case is different. You may have to do those things, but you went to prison. I don't have to do those things because I just got drunk and wet my pants. You may have to do these things because you lost everything. I don't have to because I lost nothing. Same message, same death sentence, no matter who's telling it to you. Those requirements are in the last paragraph, step 1, 12 and 12. And if you're not willing to do them and you're an alcoholic of my type, you're going to die or you're going to go nuts. But you're not going to recover from this seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And I don't give a damn what the treatment center that you went through or the counselor you have or the doctor who's prescribing your medication to you says. You're going to die if you're an alcoholic. You're not going to be able to stop this thing. You're caught in a trap that you can't spring. You got to have help. What is it? What is this thing that's got me in such a dilemma? This book has a thing that was written by a non-alcoholic doctor in 1935. A non-alcoholic doctor wrote the best description of the disease of alcoholism that has ever been put to pen by any man before, since, or will ever put it. And if you can identify with this part of it, and you're willing to do it, you may be an alcoholic. And if you can't, Alcoholics Anonymous can't help you. And I don't care what anybody tells you, come on in and sit down. It don't do you any good. And it said very simply, the doctor wrote that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And even though they know that it's injurious, after a while they cannot differentiate the true from the false, and they think that their alcoholic life is the only normal one. And it says in this book, and unless they can experience the peace and ease which comes with taking a few drinks that they see other people taking with impunity, that means non-reaction to it, I guess, they succumb to the desire. You understand? Listen to them. They didn't say they could succumb to the craving because they don't have a craving. If you're an alcoholic and you don't have alcohol into your system, there is no craving. So there ain't anything you can do about that. If you don't put alcohol into your system, there'll be no craving for alcohol. So what do we have to do? The doctor says here that unless I can have an entire psychic change, there's very little hope for my recovery. Well, what's an entire psychic change? Be a different way of thinking, I suppose. How do I get a different way of thinking? Not by thinking. I don't think straight. My thinker's bent. I got to take actions that will change my thinking. I do not learn to think things that will change my actions. So what are the actions? What is the first step in a program of recovery called Alcoholics Anonymous? A lot of people will tell you it's in chapter 5. Anybody who will tell you that's never read this book. The first step in recovery is in chapter 3. Second paragraph, third chapter, called More About Alcoholism. Listen to what it said. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. Now, that doesn't mean I'm alcoholic. Not at all. We learned that we had to fully concede. Concede. That means give it up. Surrender, in other words. I got caught in this noose. I can't spring it. I need help. What am I going to do about it? The book says I have to concede. I have to give up the battle. I can't fight it any longer. It's whipped me into a state of reasonableness according to this last paragraph that I read from the 12 and 12, that I stand ready to do anything that will remove this murderous obsession from me. Now I have to concede, I got to give it up. I'm alcoholic. I can't beat this deal by myself. Now what is the deadly part about this little thing here? I'll read it to you. The delusion that I am like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed. Now how do you like that, scholars? How do you like that, you soothsayers that say, says we return to normal living? You better hope and pray to God you never run into me at my normal living. This book has changed more lives in the years it's been in publication than all the combined therapy in the history of the world. Changed more lives. So you who are tied into these therapists who are helping you with your depression are in deep pucky if you're an alcoholic. The delusion, what's the delusion? It's a fantasy. I'm not like other people. That does not mean that I don't get up every day and go to work. It does not mean that I don't pay my bills. It doesn't mean that I don't love my wife. It doesn't mean that I don't have a home, that I have a little dog, I don't have a car, I don't pay my taxes, I don't do all this stuff. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that I'm an alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Nothing in the world will ever make me non-alcoholic. And the thing that stands between me and total insanity or death is one drink. One simple little drink. And so we don't work this program of recovery to become wonderful people. We do it to put ourselves in such a state of grace, basically, that we don't have to take a drink. Because the good doctor says we become restless, irritable, and discontented. He didn't say that's when we were drinking. Sober, an alcoholic becomes restless, irritable, and discontented. And unless I can experience the peace and ease that comes with taking a few drinks that I see other people taking with impunity. You see them all the time out there. You ought to listen to what they say. I mean, they're Lulus. Oh, no, thank you. I'm starting to feel it. Oh, I have to be home for dinner at 5, you know. I got paid. I'm home. She expects me to come home with the paycheck. I'll be there. Good. Leave your drink for me when you go out the door. It's amazing what you hear. Alcoholics like me don't say that. Let's go to Mexico. We don't have a car, steal one, but we'll get there. We're going. When you get back, who cares? There's something down there. What is it? I don't know, but it'll be there when I get there. That's the first step in the program of recovery. The book says that's the first step in recovery. The first step is that I have to concede to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic, and the delusion that I'm like other people, or presently may be, that I'm going to come to this place where I'm immune to drinking again, that I don't ever have to worry about that. I'm going to go out there and maybe have to do nothing because I know what's wrong with me now. You hear that all the time. I hear that in every meeting I go to. I'm not going to drink. I know what's wrong with me. I don't even think about a drink. The first drink does never start with a think. Matter of fact, the first drink very hardly ever starts with a drink. It starts a long, long time before you become restless, irritable, and discontented and have to take a drink. Be a lot of things. They ain't going well at work. She's mad at me, you know. My relations are not going well. Nobody seems to appreciate me no more. You know, I'm just one of the mob in the meeting anymore. You know, I'll make coffee, nobody likes it. Nobody says how good it is to me. I've never been elected secretary of my home group. On and on and on it goes. And on the tag end of it is a drink. See, I'm 44 years and some odd months away from my last drink of alcohol or my last fix or my last anything. And way back here, I know what makes the big hurt go away. Put me in the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong set of circumstances, I'll be drunk. I'm an alcoholic. I don't have any more choice about that than I do about flying around this room. So what keeps me from being in that state where I have to drink? And don't ever get it into your mind, if you're an alcoholic, that you won't be in a position where you will not have to drink. There will come a time, if you're an alcoholic, this book says it very simply, there will come a time when you will have no mental defense against the first drink. Isn't that amazing? The book says that. Now, I didn't write that. It was written in 1935. It's still the only program of recovery for alcoholics of my type in the world today. In 9,000 years of recorded history, this is the only thing that's ever worked for people like us. No mental defense. It says the defense has to come from a power greater than myself. This manuscript, this magnificent manuscript called Alcoholics Anonymous, the main purpose of this book is to introduce you to a power greater than yourself. And what the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program of recovery does is very simply just squeeze you right out of yourself. It kills the thing that's going to kill you. The book describes it very simply like this. Selfishness and self-centeredness, it seems to be the root of all my problems. I must be rid of it or it's going to kill me. And how many times have you sat in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and heard some of these people say, there are no musts in AA? Those people have never read our book. Never. This book is full of musts. I just read one to you. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of all of my problems today. I must be rid of it or it's going to kill me. Now here's the kicker. I can't get rid of it. I can't get rid of my self-centeredness because I'm selfish by nature. I'm self-centered by nature. I'm egotistical to the core. I can't do anything about it. What am I going to do? I'm caught in a trap I can't swim. I don't know what the hell to do. I'm dead. What this thing's all about. You've also heard this misstatement in Alcoholics Anonymous. I worked the first 3 steps before I ever come in the door, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's horsepucky. On page 30 of our book, Alcoholic, this book, I know it's from Northern California because it belongs to Rick. It didn't come from Southern California. Some of the guys from Southern California got a book just like this one. If the first step is on page 30, where's the second step? Let me tell you. It's somewhere between 30 and 60. Isn't that amazing? Now, how in the hell are you going to work 3 steps if you don't even know what them 30 pages are? You don't know what the first step is, and you haven't discovered what the second step is. How are you going to find out? How do you know what the first 3 steps are? You can't even describe what an alcoholic is when you come to AA if you don't know, if you haven't read this book. Why everybody wants to stick up your hand and be one right away is beyond me. The dumbest statement I ever heard in my life. I knew I was alcoholic a long time before I ever got here. How in the hell would you know? You have to know what an alcoholic is before you can be one. You cannot seek the answer to a problem if you don't know what it is. And alcohol is not the problem. How do you like that, you purist? Alcohol and drinking is not your problem. If drinking and alcohol are your problem, Alcoholics Anonymous can't help you. This book will mean nothing to you. You don't have to work steps. You don't have to have a sponsor. You don't have to go to home groups. You don't have to do nothing. All you got to do is just don't drink. If your problem is alcohol, quit drinking. If your problems are drugs, quit using them. If you're caught in this seemingly hopeless state, this debilitating, soul-destroying, life-threatening, insanity-causing illness called alcoholism, just stopping drinking does nothing for the alcoholic anymore except make life so damned unbearable they can't stand it. On page 60 of our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't know where you, but where I go to meeting, every time I go to meeting, they read the 5th chapter. They read it, but they always stop right here at, see, God could and would if he were sought. It says, being convinced, we were at step 3. That's 30 pages later from step 1. Somewhere in those 30 pages, they're hoping, or maybe almost assuming what they write in this book, that I've come to believe in a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. Now, the funny thing about that is you don't have to restore sane people to sanity. They've kind of instigated that we're all nutty in a fruitcake, that we got screws loose somewhere, and we got no bolts to fit them. That's what they're saying here. The book says this, very simple. I didn't write this book. It's just been my experience of studying it for 40-some-odd years. I find no flaws in this book whatsoever. None. I hear people, if there's anything in this book, it's just hearsay. Psychobabbles come from someplace else, from some intellectual giant that had nothing better to do to try to improve on Alcoholics Anonymous. Some idiot probably whose sole purpose is to make money and not help people. It's an amazing thing. If we're at step 3, what is it? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Now, they don't say drunk or sober there, do they? Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Isn't that amazing what this book says? Little words, you never hear an A anymore hardly, unless you're in a book study. You never hear stuff like that from meetings. All you hear about is how well I've done since I've been not drinking. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Nothing in the world describes me any better than that. Selfish and self-centered to the core, to the very core. How does this grab you? Let's see if this rings a bell. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. Damn people keep getting in the way of my happiness all the time, don't they? They never behave the way I want them to. Somehow or other, I got to get rid of this type of thinking. I got to quit worrying about what you're doing and what you're not doing and start concentrating on what I should be doing. I can't be worried about what's going on in the world out there because I have no control over anything. The book says I'm powerless. Powerless. That means I don't have any power about anything. And I got to become powerless to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It doesn't mean I become powerful. It means I become powerless. It says here that On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest, but as with most humans, he is sure more likely to have varied traits. They're describing an alcoholic. What usually happens, the show doesn't come off, he begins to think life doesn't treat him right, he decides to exert himself more, he becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still the play does not suit him, admitting he may be somewhat at fault. He is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, and self-pity. Now, the problem with becoming self-pity, he'll sink into a depression. And we all know what's happened in the last few years about depression. The guy sitting next to him will introduce him to his therapist or give him his phone number, who will help him out of his depression. And depression isn't anything more than self-centeredness. The more self-centered I am, the more depressed I become. What is step 3? It goes on saying how it works. It says, when I already said it here, on page 62, it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problem. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but they invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. And the third step says we are now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him. So they're assuming that we have come to believe in some power greater than ourselves. Assuming that. They are almost willing to guarantee you that if you follow the instructions of this magnificent manuscript up to this point, this is where you are. Having had, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. They're mentioning that word again. I wish they wouldn't mention wealth, self, and self-centeredness so much because it irritates me. That I may better do thy will. It says, take away my difficulties. Now, how many times have you sat in meetings and heard some joker say, I'm working on that deal. I'm working on that deal. I'm working on. Listen to what the book said. This is the authority in Alcoholics Anonymous, not some self-centered egotist that don't know what the hell he's talking about. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thy wilt. I don't even know what that's going to become. I've made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him, so why don't I just let him do what he wants to do with it? I'm not doing such a good job. I run my own life for 30 years, and I ended up 22 years as ward of the state of California, for Christ's sakes. Boy, I was working at it. I'm doing a great job. I used to think I was a hell of a gangster till I realized how much time I did. I wasn't very successful at that either. It's amazing. Take away my difficulties. Take them away. I don't want them. Take them away. I can't get rid of them. If I'm selfish and self-centered, my difficulties become magnified by my own selfish thinking. I'm caught in a jackpot. I don't know how to get out of it. If I don't have any power greater than myself, if I'm an intellectual giant trying to work and think my way through all these things, I can't turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him because I don't understand anything but equations. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them. Now listen to what this says. All you who are doing your own program. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy way of life, and thy love. May I do thy will always. Jesus, they just want to make us nothing. They want to turn us into nothing. You need a little self-will going on here. You need a little ego going on here. Sure did, boy. You got a ton of it before you got here. Now they're just trying to get you cut down to size where you can live comfortably. It doesn't say a thing about me doing anything at all but turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. It doesn't mean I just give up my life to God. If I could turn my life over to God, then you have to tell me what the other 9 steps are for. Doesn't say that, though. It says, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. I left my house yesterday. I turned my little dog over to the care of my wife. And when I get home, my little dog will be placed back in my care again. And we got both of us taking care of her. It says we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. Jesus, how simple can it get? I got to make sure that I have prepared this thing, that I am willing to actually turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand it. Now, I may not understand God. When I got to this point in the book, when I was new, in my first year in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I got to this point in this book, I could not believe in a God of my understanding. If you're having that difficulty, let me tell you what sufficed in my case. I turned my will and my life over to the care of the people of Alcoholics Anonymous who came into that institution every week. I believed that they believed in something. I don't want to call God's attention on me at all. Because my grandmother said God punished the little boys who were bad, and I've been hiding for a long time. So I turned it over to a group. I turned it over to Alcoholics Anonymous or the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's perfectly all right as long as it ain't you. As long as you're not faking believing in something that you really don't believe in. That happens all too frequently here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Turn my will and my life over to care of this baloney. I got to have something with flesh on it when I'm new. I got to have somebody that I can see, touch, and feel when I'm new. Now, 40 some odd years later, I have a God of my very own. But when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, or struggling with this program, or struggling with this book, I could not believe in something I didn't see. Because I'm driven by 100,000 unnameless fears anyhow. I'm afraid all retribution's coming back. I'm afraid I'm going to be held responsible for every deed I ever did in my life anyhow. Now, I don't know about heaven or hell. I got no organized religion background in my life, but my grandmother told me as a child sitting at her knee, God punishes little boys who are bad. And I could never remember when He hadn't been kicking me around. Or so I thought. It wasn't my fault that I did all this stuff. It was God's fault, punishing me. It goes on and on and on. So when I'm new, the group became my higher power. Or at least the people who came in there. And later on, when I got out of the penitentiary, my sponsor became my higher power. Now, there ain't wrong with that at all. As long as I ain't sleeping with it. Well, you think that's funny? I know a lot of people whose higher powers laying alongside them at night. Or they're down the hall waiting for them to come down there in the middle of the night or something. I know a lot of people like that. I know a lot of people whose higher power is in their bank account. I know a lot of people whose higher power is in the businesses that they own, or the automobiles that they drive, or the clothes that they wear, or whatever it is, that trinkets that make them something out here. The only problem with that is, if that becomes your higher power, sooner or later it's going to fail you. But if I know anything about the alcoholic personality being one, is this, that there ain't never enough of anything. Ain't enough money. My closets will prove to you there ain't enough clothes. My golf clubs will prove to you can't get enough of them. My automobiles will prove it to you. My life in general will prove to you there's always something looking better on the other side of the street. On and on and on and on and on it goes. That, whether you want to believe it, whether you want to buy it or not, is your higher power. That's it. So what's wrong with having a sponsor for a higher power? Nothing. Except it cannot remain such forever, because all human beings have feet of clay. They all burp from time to time. Some of us even pass gas at the wrong moment. It's amazing. Basic human beings. That's all we are here. Basic human beings. Selfish, self-centered to the core, egotistical beyond belief. We got a program of recovery. We got a disease that's killing us or driving us insane. And what's our thought press? I ain't got it. My case is different. I don't have to do it. That may be fine for you, but you don't understand. You're not educated. You don't have any degrees. Who are you to tell me that I can't take psychic medication? I can't. The book can. The book can tell you in this step I just read to you. What did it say? I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. And until you can write in there for me, God and something or other, it's going to remain that way in my mind. And nobody in God's green world is ever going to change it. This book, this program of recovery, is the thing that I try to the best of my ability, no matter how far short I fall on it, is the thing that guides my life. The words are in black letters on white paper. There are no hidden messages in there for special educated people who know more than we do. There are some of those people who study every word of the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And they try to figure out things that Bill wanted to say. And they stand around like, you really don't quite get it, do you? One of them said to me one time, what do you think Bill was trying to say to us? I said, what he said, God, that stopped him cold. That's how simple it is with me. I have not tried to improve on a program of recovery called Alcoholics Anonymous. I have not tried to read anything into this book that isn't there. I take it for what it is. It's gospel to me. It is the only thing that has allowed me to live in this world with some degree of comfort, with some peace and some dignity, with a God of my very own for over 40 years of my life. The only thing. There hasn't been any intellectual giant that I have sat at the feet of and listened and spooned over. It hasn't been something that I have taken from time to time to help me out of my depressions, because I get depressed. All selfish, self-centered, egotistical people will become depressed from time to time, because sooner or later it ain't going my way. It ain't. Damn it. If only she would behave. If only they would pay me more money. If only I had a bigger car. Look at old Rick over there. He ain't half as smart as I am. He got a bigger car. That goes on and on and on. Not this Rick. Rick is all right. Rick has a wireless computer. It says we found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person such as our wife, best friend or spiritual advisor. It also says here it's better to meet God alone with one who might misunderstand. Better. In our book study meeting in Long Beach many years ago when we first started it, when we got to this phase of the book, we all got down on our knees and took the third step prayer together. It was a wonderful experience. Have any of you ever done that? Why don't we all do it? Why don't we all get down and say the third step prayer together like we mean it? Okay? But it may help me. I may not be able to get up. We all got the book? Here's what it says. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as I will. Relieve me of bondage to self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Thy power, thy love, and thy way of life, may I do thy will always. I'll have a drink on that. Well, you're used to kneeling in the desert, Mark. But that basically is the first three steps of our program, Recovery. Very simple, but they ain't easy. And it takes a lot, like the book says, it takes a lot of preparation and a lot of surrendering to get to this point anyhow. A lot of people tell you this is a surrender step, but you have to give up a long time before you get here, or this ain't going to mean nothing to you. I appreciate your attendance. I appreciate your consideration, and I appreciate your listening. This means the world to me, this book. I love this book. I love talking about this book. I love talking about Alcoholics Anonymous because when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, my first 19 months in Alcoholics Anonymous, I did not have the ability to sit in a room and believe people. I sat there and nodded at them, and I knew they knew something because they came in to see me once a week. But luckily, somebody told me about a book called Alcoholics Anonymous when I was new. And my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous began the day I opened up the pages of the book Alcoholics Anonymous and started to read it. I needed no instruction to follow the instructions, and neither do you. It's all out here in black and white. Anybody can read, can do this. You don't have to be an intellectual giant. You don't have to be a camaraderie nowhere. You don't have to be, if you can barely read, you can do this. You can recover from a seemingly hopeless mind. Nobody in the world has ever been too dumb to make this program. But there's been eons of people around here who are too damn smart to make it. So I thank you. Now we'll have a little break for about 15 minutes, go to the bathroom, have a smoke and drink some coffee, and come back. And if we got any questions, I'll try to answer them. Good.